My name is Kothari. I'm Chief Executive of Zilico Limited. Zilico is a company out of the UK utilizing something called electrical impedance spectroscopy. Simplistically, what we're taking advantage of the fact is that human tissue conducts electricity. And as normal tissue moves into early pre-cancer and then late pre-cancer and then invasive cancer, the electrical properties of that tissue changes quite significantly, and you can measure that. And essentially, that's what our technique does. Our lead focus and lead products are in the area of cervical cancer diagnostics. Our first product, which is the Z-scan, is within referral market. So that is for women who've already had an abnormal smear test and then need to be referred to a gynecologist for further examination. We've got a second product, the APX200, which is in development. It's very similar to the first one, but that should be out in a couple of years. The device uses a single-use, what we call EIS interface, or sensor. And we're just launching the product later this year. And in the main, and specifically for India, we're looking for sales and marketing partners to bring this product out. The product Z-scan has been through 5 clinical trials, all published in peer-reviewed journals. We've got patent protection, and you can read some of that there. It's a platform technology, so you can actually apply it to other cancers. 80% of cancers are epithelial cancers, and so using EIS to actually discriminate is something that can be done. The challenge for us is actually getting to the site, so we can't solve everything. We've just completed a proof of concept trial looking at oral lesions, oral dysplasia, and we're very encouraged by the results, and we're taking that to the next stage of development. And by the way, we're private equity backed in the UK. So just a bit of, this morning we were talking about market needs and clinical needs, so I'm just going to put that into context of why we actually got into this area. So cancer of the cervix, I think most of you around this room will know it's a significant issue around the world. But then specifically, if we start looking at India, then I think my figures are slightly dated. The latest one I read was that India loses about 100,000 women every year to the disease. So something has to be done about it to reduce or to stop that. Cervical cancer, pretty much right across the globe, is managed in a classic way. There are slight offshoots of this. But a woman has a smear test, normally at a local primary care center. Cells are then sent off to a cytopathology lab. If that is abnormal, the woman then is referred to what's known as a colposcopy examination, normally done by a gynecologist. That's a visual technique. They use a colposcope, which is a binocular, and they use a primitive method that was developed in the 1920s by a Nazi professor who was playing around with some organic acids. They use acetic acid, so to you and I, that's vinegar. They spray a bit of vinegar and see some color changes. And from that, they have to try and make a judgment on whether they're seeing high grade or not. If they see something high grade, then they will take a biopsy, and then you have the different sort of permutations depending on what it is. So it's quite a convoluted method, subjective, time-consuming, and essentially that's where the development of Z-scan came about. I was just mentioning to somebody over coffee that it was a conversation on a train between a gynecologist and a professor of medical physics that actually the concept of this was developed. I actually have one of the devices here with me. I was at Arab Health and we were exhibiting, so I have it with me. This is the single-use sensor that goes, and if anyone wants to have a closer look after this, please come and see me. This is the development pathway that the product's taken. So the first trial was published in The Lancet in 2000, and since then we've been optimizing the technology and improving sort of the hardware. So we're now in 2013, just about to launch it. It's slightly slower than we'd have liked. I think some things in the NHS don't always move as fast as you like. So talk about the clinical positioning and what actually it's addressing in terms of market need. So Z-scan is positioned alongside colposcopy. It's an adjunct. What is it going to help? Well, one of the issues in this whole area is that there are about 50 or 70% of diagnostic biopsies that are carried out are negative. And that's data right across Europe, US. So clinicians carry out too many biopsies because they're not quite sure of what they're seeing. Z-scan allows to actually better direct the biopsy and get more accurate data. So that's one. The other is actually reducing the number of overtreated women. 1 in 3 excisions, so excision being the treatment for high-grade precancer, have no evidence of disease. So those are women who've been overtreated because they thought they actually had cancer or precancer. So we're trying to reduce that and remove that level of subjectivity. The second product, APX200, perhaps slightly more easier to appreciate, is a positioning within primary care screening. It may replace the smear test, it may not. That's part of the development. We need to do a clinical trial on that. But the benefits are results are immediate, counseling is in real time, and the referrals are immediate. We often get the question of what, people have heard about vaccines in this area. Vaccines, yes, they will reduce the incidence of disease. What they have done is disrupted the marketplace in terms of diagnostics. But the one thing of vaccines is they're not fully protective. So cervical cancer is caused by human papillomavirus. There are 100 different genotypes of that. 15 of them cause cervical cancer, but the vaccines only protect against 2 of them, fully protect. So you still need to screen them. And there are some significant issues, and we talk specifically about India, then the cost issue, and actually transplantation of vaccines, the cold storage, etc. Those are significant challenges that need to be looked at. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. This is essentially just showing you that many of you will be aware when you're looking at diagnostics, you're looking at always balancing sensitivity against specificity. The blue line there, if I can get the blue line there, is showing where colposcopy sort of performs today. The red shows where Z-scan is actually improving, and that's a significant improvement. And we were talking about this a bit this morning, and I brought it up because it's a hot topic on my radar in terms of health economics, and it's the impact. Whilst this is a UK perspective, it does transfer to other areas. The values may be slightly different, but we can reduce the number of biopsies by between 50 and 70%. The thing that the NHS or the healthcare payer in the UK got excited about was the release of 18,000 appointments. That means doctors can see more women or they can carry out other procedures. That was of significant value to the NHS. Things we've been doing over the past 12, 18 months is driving clinical endorsement. So I have been out to India a few times, actually trying to drive that clinical endorsement. So we've been talking to clinicians at the Tata Memorial, at the Kidwai Memorial here in Bangalore, and the Mazmudar Shaw Centre and AIMS in Delhi. Just trying to understand how the current clinical pathway does work and how it could work in the future, and whether Z-scan has a role to play. We believe it does, that's why I'm here. Some further just points about where we are. Our data from the latest pivotal trial actually won the best scientific presentation in San Francisco recently, which we're very proud of. But also that there's a lot of interest from health policymakers who are trying to understand what the new clinical pathway will be with the disruption of vaccines. And there's quite a lot of interest there. Just to give you a quick, I talked about the oral cancer. We've got an esophageal cancer product in the pipeline as well, but that's another few years away. I think that's it. Thank you very much for your time, ladies and gentlemen.